evening. Thank you for tuning in to Face to Face. I'm your host, Dennis Ward. Our guest this week is Nelson Tagoona of Baker Lake, Nunavut. The 23-year-old has pioneered what's called throat boxing. It's a hybrid of Inuit throat singing and beatboxing, and it's something else. Here's a sample of Nelson performing. Pretty amazing stuff. It's my pleasure to welcome Nelson Tagoona to Face to Face. Nelson, thanks for joining us.
How is it going?
It's going great. We're happy to have you here. We just saw you perform there in front of a lot of youth. Maybe if you could tell us a bit about what it's like to perform for youth.
Yeah, actually what the viewers just saw was something I did with Blueprint for Life a few years back. That was in Kugluktuk. It was in Kugarik that was filmed. And the audience there was great. To talk about youth as a whole, it's amazing. Working with youth is probably the most inspirational thing that has ever happened to me. Because, especially as I'm getting older now, I've been performing for roughly 8 years. And working with youth always brings me home. Like, there's that one thing that brings people home deep down, and for me it's working with youth, because the reactions you get from the youth and their hunger to learn always satisfies that thing inside of me. I'm driven to share it, and I love sharing with youth. So that experience that the viewers just saw was probably the best shot they'd get from one of my performances.
As we mentioned, you're a pretty young guy yourself still, 23 years old. How did you and when did you get into throat boxing?
Originally, I was actually not going to be a throat boxer. My goal was actually to play heavy metal, but it never happened. Yeah. The way that it started, though, is in the very, very beginning, it was an experiment. It just started off as an experiment. I was performing at a talent show back home. It was a 25 years, it was an anniversary for a business. And I performed that concert, and the judges told me they wanted to give me first place, but I didn't include any culture into my show, so they bumped me into second place. And everybody thought, like, you should have got first, you should have got... But it makes sense. There's no culture mixed in, so I'm not supporting who I am and where I come from. Mm-hmm. And that's when I thought I need to add this element into my performances and become more true to who I am and where I come from. And that's where it all really started. And my second show was in Kujuak. That show really showed me there's a path for this. It really showed me that there's a direction in which I could thrive in, as long as I believe in what I'm doing. And I haven't stopped believing in what I'm doing, and it's still growing, and it's becoming more and more inspirational as I get older.
Were there other people out there doing this, or is this something you just basically came up with on your own?
In the very beginning, I was doing this on my own, but I did not coin the phrase throat boxing. I was just throat singing and beatboxing. I was just mixing my culture into what I enjoy doing. And then I worked with a crew called Blueprint for Life, and they were already having beatboxers perform with throat singers, and they were calling that throat boxing. But and then there was somewhat of an argument for a while, actually, between us. But we've settled the argument. I started it, they started, because we were like arguing who did it first, because people were saying the inventor. But I started something called solo throat boxing. So do you want to see what?
Absolutely.
So throat singing, usually two females will throat sing, and they'll go like up, up, and the other will bounce off, and it's like up, 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 and I decided I need to I need to do it as one. I shouldn't need a crew to do this with me. I have myself and my voice. No instrument, just my voice. So throat singing sounds something like. So I'll mix in beatboxing with that, and I'll go. So like I'll start mixing and then creating this whole piece so it sounds more whole, you know. So that to me is throat boxing.
And it's pretty amazing stuff. What's the reaction when you first start and people hear this coming from you?
It's never the same reaction. It's always an interesting reaction for those who haven't heard this before and they first hear it. Like in Puvernitok, for example, I performed at some place called the Snow Festival. It was my first time to perform there, and I was actually starting off, there's a stage, and I started off on the floor, and I was doing this for the audience, and then I ran onto the stage, and there was a stampede of people coming to the stage, you know, and the reactions I get are just as amazing from throat boxing. I could be performing for one person, and I don't know, it's like I changed their perspective in a deeper, it's hard to understand, it's hard to describe, but the reactions are always phenomenal. I've never really had a non-phenomenal reaction from my audience. Audiences have treated me well through the years.
As we mentioned, you know, you talk a lot to youth and try to inspire, and you're not one to shy away from discussing your own personal, you know, pain, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Really, the deeper purpose for music is just filling that void. I could word it in many different ways, but really it's filling that void. There's that thing inside that, you know, because I've been through a lot growing up, and I've lost my father, and I've lost a lot of friends, and those situations could have totally been prevented, you know, and I understand that, and that's why I share such a strong message for many audiences, and I tend to target the youth with these messages because they're our future leaders, and I believe in the youth, and, you know, I really want the youth to, for some, just be exposed to the fact that this is going on, and maybe it'll ignite a spark and help them find solutions, you know. So I just want youth to truly believe in themselves and believe in a positive change, and I believe we're in, you know, the journey has started, and Nunavut throughout the last 100, I don't know, throughout history, you know, Nunavut's at a point where we're becoming more strong and healing, you know, there's a lot of healing up north, and there could still be more.
Dealing, you know, with the loss of your father and with friends, how did music help you get through that?
Well, music for me, like, I don't want to talk about this in too great detail, but when I was younger, I got picked on a lot, and I was alienated a lot, and a lot of the people I turned to, they are where I felt comfortable, or I felt safe around when I'm being bullied or alienated, or, you know, but a lot of the people who stuck with me and supported me during those times, they took their own lives, and that's how it felt for me growing up, is I'm going to find someone where I'm going to feel safe around, and they're going to take their, you know, but music is the place where I feel most safe, and music can't die, you know, for me, and music's going to live on forever for me, and that's, you know, the power of music is absolutely amazing. It impacts lives in the most positive ways imaginable. And music is mine.
Couldn't agree more. We're going to hold you there for a minute so we can step aside for a quick break, and then we'll be right back with more with Nelson Tagoona here on Face to Face.
From the beginning, APTN National News and APTN Investigates made a commitment to journalistic excellence.
We were the first Aboriginal network in the world.
Our work has been recognized by respected agencies worldwide. In May 2016, we were recognized with awards from the Canadian Association of Journalists. In October, APTN's Paul Barnsley was presented with the JHR Lifetime Achievement Award in Human Rights Reporting. This past January, APTN accepted an ECPAT Canada Media Award. And most recently in May, APTN was honored with the coveted Canadian Association of Journalists Charles Burry Award in recognition of significant contribution to Canadian journalism. APTN would like to thank you, our viewers, and reaffirm our commitment to you. APTN National News and APTN Investigates, uncovering the stories that others won't.
Aboriginal Day Live, are you here?
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest is musician Nelson Tagoona. That was some of Nelson's performance from Aboriginal Day Live this past Ab Day from here in Winnipeg. Nelson, you've played some pretty big shows. That was, I believe, your third Ab Day performance. What's it like coming from a community of roughly, 2,000 people to play in front of crowds that are that big?
For me, I had a gift growing up. I had the gift of believing in myself, even if it didn't make sense that it could actually happen. I still believed in it. But for many others, I come from a place where it's easy to lose hope in what you're doing because you're not being fed well, a lot of times you're not being fed the encouragement and the, I guess, the resources to make it happen. But my belief in just creating something that I see in my mind, So I believed as a kid in something called the law of attraction, like attracts like, and I filled my mind with all these positive things, and I focused on music all the time. Like when I was younger, I would beatbox for maybe 14 hours a day, and because you don't need your hands to beatbox, So music for me, coming out of a small town, it's very powerful in a way because I understand what it means to be a solitary individual and rely on yourself a lot. But going out into these crowds and experiencing things that a lot of youth from the north don't get to see, I think I'm very privileged, and I'm very honored to have that privilege. But coming out into audiences like Aboriginal Day Live, where we're performing for 15,000, 20,000 people, that's just, it's not realistic if you're in a small town thinking, But for me, it happened. Dreams come true as long as you truly believe in them.
Nelson, you are an inspiration to many youth, and you do a lot of work to try and inspire the youth. One of those is a nonprofit organization called Blueprint for Life. Can you tell us a bit about that work?
Yeah, Blueprint for Life is founded by an individual named Stephen LaFleur, aka B-Boy Buddha. Shout out to Buddha. They do social work. They do a lot of social work in the north. When I was younger, I took the Blueprint for Life program before I started performing, and it impacted me very, very deeply. They do amazing work. I recommend all the viewers to check out blueprintforlife.ca and read up a little of what they do, because I can't simply describe the work they do. They do so much, and what I did was through social work through hip-hop. So they kept us busy. They had us dancing all day, and then we'd stop and have talks, and then they'd give us we'd have a snack break, and they'd give us bandana. It fit our culture and what we're used to, and Blueprint for Life tailors their work to be relevant to the Inuit culture, and I find I don't know anybody who could put a better social work program together for youth in the North than Blueprint for Life, because it's totally relevant to what the youth are into, and a lot of Inuit are naturally physically active because the majority of the youth up there grew up hunting, so they understand hard work. And, I think when you're too busy dancing and following, the healthy side of hip-hop, there's no time for crime or no time to get into the wrong areas, and I have a lot of respect for Blueprint for Life, and I'm honored to have that privilege of actually working with them. They're phenomenal.
Nelson, you're back here in Winnipeg doing a couple of shows, but what's coming up next for you?
Right after here, I'm working with a group called Red Sky Performance. We're putting a piece together called Adizoken, and our piece, we're actually incorporating the Toronto Symphony Orchestra into what we've been, I don't really know how to describe it because we haven't done it yet, and I actually haven't rehearsed it yet, but I've heard some of the pieces that we've put together, and it is pretty interesting. It is something I've never done before, and I can't speak too much about it because I haven't done it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's just it's on October, I think it's October 8th.
You also got a performance coming up with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra? Yeah.
That is, that's the event. I'm super excited for it. I don't know how to put words to it. When I was younger, I listened to a piece by Steve Vai, and I always dreamed I could be doing that, but my parents told me, get real, Nelson, you're never going to work with an orchestra. But here I am going out to go throat box with an orchestra. I think that's really unique. I've never seen an orchestra work with traditional throat singers and beatboxers before.
Yeah, sounds pretty amazing. Wish I could be there myself for that. What's the best way for anybody looking to listen to some of your music? How can people do that?
Some individuals have posted stuff online. My social media, I'm not very present in the social media, but there is stuff online. I have a Facebook page that others could like and follow me at. I do need to post more. I need to post more, but I am on Facebook, and I do have content that I could send individuals if they're looking.
Album coming anytime soon?
Actually, it's been in the works. I've been thinking about it. I've been working on pieces for many, many years now, making sure it's perfect, because when I was younger, I took pride in being not only an independent musician or independent performer, but also being an independent performer with no manager and no album, but yet I'm able to go all over the place performing. And I've actually never even applied for an event before. I've only been invited to events, So I think it's treated me very well. I am very lucky to have what I have. But for me, I understand that it's because I believe in it so much. I see where it can go, and I nurture my craft so dearly.
Nelson, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. You're a real inspiring guy, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Face to Face. Wishing for you to have continued success and hopefully see an album from you sometime soon. Time for another quick break, and then we'll be back to wrap up this week's episode of Face to Face. Welcome back to Face to Face. Again, our thanks to Nelson Tagoona. What an inspiration he is. Next week on the show, we're going to have two guests. Jamie Isaac and Julie Nagam are the co-curators of the Winnipeg Art Gallery's largest ever contemporary Indigenous art exhibition. Here's a look at some of that.
How many years and how many decades have we, in these kinds of institutions, held up art done solely by white male artists? And how many shows do we still do that in Canada? So it's really about thinking about that balance of representation in these large-scale institutions.
That's all the time we have for today. We're always looking for new guests, so if you have any suggestions, please email us at news@aptn.ca. And a reminder, this episode and all of our episodes of Face to Face are available as a podcast. You can find those at aptn.ca/face-to-face podcast. We're going to end off tonight's show with more from Nelson Tagoona and his performance from the 2017 edition of Aboriginal Day Live in Winnipeg. Thank you for tuning in to Face to Face. I'm Dennis Ward.